And a TGIF, everyone. Welcome into the First Call podcast representing Express Bet and First Bet. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk. And there are really two fronts on the racing calendar this Saturday. A lot of great racing coast to coast. But when you talk about the big marquee events, Jeff, it's Rebel Stakes Day at Oaklawn Park, $1.25 million there. That's just a spit in the bucket to what they're giving away in Saudi Arabia, though, with a $20 million Saudi Cup and a big undercard to go with it. So you can be assured that those two places are going to be near and dear to our handicapping hearts this afternoon.
Well, you got to get up early where I am to watch those Saudi races, but I
That's
will
right.
do so because this is a terrific card, and it makes it better for us in the States to have horses that we know that we can relate to, and that we would be very interested in seeing how they look on the world stage. So I'm looking forward to all the races at Saudi Arabia, and I'm certainly looking forward to the big one. We know the horses very well that will get most of the play. They ran in the Breeders' Cup last year. Been training some of them here at Santa Anita, locally based for us anyway. So I think it's going to be great. Good gambling. If you like a price, you'll get one. And then, of course, at Oaklawn, some pivotal races on the Derby Trail there. So great racing this weekend on Saturday around the world, not just in the States.
Not just Jeff and I helping you handicap this weekend. We've got Michelle Yu on the ground. She's working the international simulcast for the Saudi Cup program. She's going to check in just a moment with her analysis of what she's seen training in the morning towards the Saudi Cup and an undercard player too as well. So be sure to hang around for that. And want to remind you that it's the final week of the Express Bet Beat the Host contest, now in its 19th season. One more chance to qualify for the Beat the Host championship round coming up in 2 weeks' time. The final handicapper you've got to beat, our buddy and yours, Eddie Olczyk, is ready to take you on Saturday. So we will be sure to see how the results pan out there. Alexander Bertram, I told you last week I was coming for you. You beat me. So you are still alive to sweep the host. $6,000 bonus, $6,500 bonus if you sweep the host this year. So Alexander Bertram, good luck if you can take down Eddie Olczyk. He's already guaranteed $4,000, Jeff, because he's the longest lasting in the knockout round, if you will. He lasted longer than any other player. So he's got the $4,000 in tow, but you might as well beat Eddie for another $2,500, right?
Sure. Go for it.
Let's take a look at our handicapping schedule for this week's podcast for the benefit of those of you on our audio channels. We'll go through each of the races. For those of you watching on YouTube or on Twitter, be sure to repost this on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up, the likes, share it out with your friends to help grow the audience for the First Call podcast. Our 8 stakes races that we take a look at each Friday will line up this way for Saturday, February the 24th. We will go to Saudi Arabia King Abdulaziz Racecourse, the host site for the Saudi Cup. 5th year for the Saudi Cup, the Saudi Derby, the Riyadh Dirt Sprint, and the Saudi Cup will be the 3 of the 6 major thoroughbred stakes races that Jeff and I will handicap. All those races on the dirt, a couple turf races to have on the program as well. At Gulfstream, or at Oaklawn Park, I should say, on Saturday, it is Rebel Stakes Day. We will handicap the Carousel, the Honeybee, the Razorback, and the Rebel in succession. Filly and Mare Sprinters, potential Oaks fillies, Oaklawn Handicap Prep, and then, of course, the big Arkansas Derby Prep. That's how they line up the 4 races we'll handicap at Oaklawn. And then to Santa Anita, it will be the Santa Ana Stakes as we feature that race on the West Coast on Saturday. Want to remind you, good racing action at Laurel Park on Saturday as well. They're back with another big stakes weekend following up last week's General George and Barbara Fritchie. They've got the Miracle Wood and the Wide Country. Those are potential Preakness and Black-Eyed Susan local runners in that for 3-year-olds and 3-year-old fillies. And down at Gulfstream, the $125,000 Gulfstream Park Turf Sprint will be featured on Saturday. We already told you about Beat the Host. Costs just $50 to play. Check that out on Saturday against Eddie Olczyk. And if you want to play in some handicapping feeder tournaments, some of the bigger, more high-dollar events later in the season, you can qualify for many of those this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for just a $40 entry fee in our feeder tournaments for Gulfstream and for Santa Anita. Okay, Jeff, let's take our handicapping game overseas right now. We're going to talk about the action in Saudi Arabia. King Abdulaziz Racecourse is the venue. A one-turn mile and an eighth that you can run at Saudi Arabia's main racecourse there. So it's going to be a little different configuration than when these horses matched up, many of them in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And for our horses who in the Saudi Derby may be looking ahead to a potential Triple Crown bid, it's a one-turn mile there for the Saudi Derby. So we're not apples to apples in the comparisons when you go two turns in one, and the track configuration and the geographical, I don't know, what do you want to call this, a neutral site for most of the horses,
I think
right?
so, yeah.
This changes up the handicapping equation a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in the past, you'd get a Japanese horse, you'd kind of like, well, I'll believe it if I, when I see it, type of thing. But now that they've had so much international success, you look at a horse like Forever Young in the Saudi Derby, and you have to scratch yourself and your head and say, maybe this is a pretty good horse. It's hard to really know for sure, because you don't know how trustworthy the speed figures are, whatever you're dealing with. But visually, you can look at a horse like Forever Young and say, that's a pretty nice horse. He's 3 for 3 in Japan. All 3 of his races were won in dominant fashion. He's been a distance to ground. That's not an issue at all. He's actually won twice at a mile and an eighth. And then most recently in a mile. He's got speed, apparently, because what we see on video is something that tells us that he can be close up. So I'm really kind of interested to see how he matches up with an American horse named Bucum Dano, who is pretty darn good himself, 4 wins and 5 starts, mostly against state-bred company. But numbers-wise, he's fairly solid. He's not brilliant, but he's a pretty decent sort of horse. Right. So it'll be interesting to see how Forever Young matches up with Bucum Dano, the gelding coming in off a win at Tampa Bay. But from what I can see on video anyway, Forever Young is he's pretty salty cold, and I would expect him to show up with a big race.
Let's go back to Kawasaki Racecourse for his most recent start. Forever Young on December 13th, winning for the 3rd straight time.
As we head around that 4th and final turn, and now we're racing, heading for home. Forever Young starting to switch it on now with that lead over Eagle Noir. And Forever Young, forever in the lead here tonight. Number 12, Forever Young, the winner of the 74th Zen Nippon Nisai Yushun by a mile. Eagle Noir in there for 2nd. Santonore in there for 3rd. Number 12, Forever Young, making it look easy. 3 victories in a row, undefeated. The world is his oyster now.
And that world goes to Saudi Arabia, and then perhaps the United Arab Emirates for the UAE Derby on Dubai World Cup night, and then to the United States. Yoshida Yahagi, the trainer, he's the D. Wayne Lucas of Japan. I mean, we've seen him with his style and his shades and come over here and win Breeders' Cup races. I mean, he knows the path and the routine to get over here now, and he's in the right hands. We're talking about Forever Young, who amongst the Japanese horses, if he can get through these next 2 steps, the Saudi Derby and the UAE Derby, he will be one of the most formidable international horses ever to contest the Kentucky Derby. But he's got to make the next step. He leaves his homeland for the first time, but the Japanese had so much success last year, winning 3 of the 6 races on Saudi Cup Day. You would suspect that unless Bucum Dano runs him into the ground, I don't know of anybody else in this field that you want to try to even kind of match up with Forever Young. He looks to be a standout in here.
And not only that, I've been going to the races for a long time, and I watched a lot of races. I don't think I've ever heard an announcer say that a horse won by a mile. That's pretty impressive. I don't know how that relates with regards to the racing form and the lengths that it went.
Yeah, right.
It's a mile, but
I think it was 7 officially. But
okay,
yeah.
But the bottom line is the best part of that race was the last part. I mean, he wasn't getting tired. He was like a train in the final 16th of a mile. And again, distance, no issue. He's got speed. That track over there is kind of deep, but I don't think that's a factor. I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to handle any kind of thing that they throw at him. So I'm really interested to see his performance, because it may not be the last we see of him tomorrow. And from a gambling standpoint, I have no idea what price he'll be, but if it's not 3 to 5 or lower, he looks it to me on paper. So really interested to see Forever Young run in the Saudi Derby.
Florida Sire Stakes Series alum Ben Tornado for Jose Angelo is over there as well. So we've got a little Gulfstream representation in the Saudi Derby. That'll be race number 4 on the card from Saudi Arabia tomorrow, and that will start the pick 6. There are 6 major thoroughbred races. They've got some Arabian races to start the card. All 9 races on the program will be offered at First Bet and Express Bet for wagering. Here's a look at the betting lineup. If you're going to be playing Saudi Arabia tomorrow, I gave you the takeout percentages for all the wagers. These are internationally set takeout wagers. So, look, you're betting into a 25% try and super and multi-race bet, but win place, of course, if you bet place, that's top 3 in international betting, so keep that in mind. So it's basically like win and show, as we would say here in America, but your place bets will be for, top 3 finishers. Good takeout there at 17.5%, the exact is in at 19%. Maybe the way that you want to lean in your wagering, if you're looking at the multi-race bets, again, pick 6 is a 50-cent minimum. That starts races 4 through 9. That will take you race number 4, which we just talked about, the Saudi Derby, all the way through the Saudi Cup. 2 pick 3s on the card, the first 3 of the thoroughbred races, 4, 5, and 6, and then the last 3, 7, 8, and 9. And then you've got a couple daily doubles starting things out in races 5 and 6, and again in races 8 and 9. So those are your wagering formats for Saturday's racing. You can bet it all with First Bet and Express Bet. And when you do so, we've got a $10 money back special when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet on all 9 races on the Saudi Cup Day card from Saudi Arabia. So up to $10 back in your account if your win bet in any race finishes 2nd or 3rd. So a little safety insurance as you bet those international races. If you want to go after Forever Young, you got a little bit of a backup plan if he happens to run 2nd or 3rd in race number 4. Let's go next up on the schedule to the 5th race on the card as we follow the Saudi Derby with the Riyadh Dirt Sprint. Jeff, this is a 6-furlong sprint. We're going to see horses in here that might end up in the Dubai Golden Shaheen, the big $2 million race coming up on Dubai World Cup Day. We've got some international interest, of course, from Japan, from around Great Britain, locally Middle Eastern type horses. But we've also got a couple Americans in there. Bold Journey for Bill Mott coming off of 3 straight wins. It's going to head west. Or head east to the far east. And Skelly will also take that big winning streak, 7 in a row from the Oaklawn base for Steve Asmussen and try the action in the Middle East. So Bold Journey, Skelly, the Americans to watch in here. How do you see the Riyadh Dirt Sprint?
Well, I see Skelly. I mean, I see a lot of ones next to his name. I also see 4 triple-digit buyer numbers in his last 6 starts. He hasn't been over-raced. He's 5, but he's only had 12 starts, 8 wins, 3 seconds. So he's genuine, he's consistent, he's fast, he can handle any kind of ground. He just won on a sloppy track in the King Cotton. Before that, his form was outstanding. And he won the Count Fleet at Oaklawn last year. It was the only graded stakes race he's been in. But numbers-wise says that he's as good as there is in the States. Practical Joke, gelding trained by Steve Asmussen. Santana, his regular rider, going over there to ride him. And his kind of speed, I think, makes him tough internationally. He's very, very quick, but he doesn't run off and hide. He's the kind of horse that can make the leads, switch off midway, and then re-break. And if he can reproduce his form, I think he'll win. And he's listed at 4-1 on the morning line for whatever that's worth. I don't know what you'll get.
Right.
But I would suspect that Skelly, as consistent and as genuine as he is, he's going to be tough to beat.
The last time we saw these horses on the Middle Eastern stage on the Golden Shaheen on Dubai World Cup Day, it was Sibelius coming from Florida. The American was able to go overseas and win that dirt sprint. Wouldn't be surprised if the Americans have an edge here with Skelly and Bold Journey as well. 2 is a horse from the Middle East that you certainly have to consider. Based in Dubai, coming off a big win last time out. I know that horse has caught Michelle Yu's eye, and we're going to check in with Michelle now from her hotel in Riyadh, where literally just a few minutes before we went on the air here to record our podcast for Friday, she filed this report. And here's what Michelle's looking at towards the Saudi Cup and some of the undercard players as well. From Dubai, here's Michelle.
Saudi Cup Day coming up tomorrow, and of course I've been on the ground here in Riyadh. I want to tell you who has looked great training, and to me that has been National Treasure. He has been so full of energy in the bridle. He almost ran over me at the starting gates the other day after he was schooling, so he just looks sensational. Anyone that's been following White Abarrio, I was convinced that he was not going to be fit enough for the Saudi Cup off that layoff, but that last work at Santa Anita, which you can watch over at XBTV, was just chef's kiss. I thought he looked fantastic there, and I think he's going to put in a good account of himself. However, even though Dutcher loves the one turn, I don't necessarily love the one turn for him. Of the Japanese horses, I think Lemon Pop is so stinking cute, but I'm just not sure if this is going to be his ideal trip. So for me, of all the Japanese horses, I'm going to buck the trend a little. I'm going to go Yushpa Tesoro. Everybody out here is talking Derma Sotogake, who was runner-up in the Classic, but Ushpa was the horse before the Breeders' Cup. I think he didn't get the best of trips that day. Hopefully he can get the best of one on Saturday night. So for me, it's going to be National Treasure over White Abarrio and Ushpa Tesoro. If I'm going to throw in a wild from the clouds long shot, it is going to be Isolate. Isolate looked fantastic on track this week. He's carrying such good flesh. He just comes out as he's just a dude, and I really liked him. He's coming in with back-to-back wins. That last win at a mile off of the layoff, I thought was a perfect stepping stone to stretch him out here. Tyler Gaffalion got off them that night, and he told the connections, absolutely, this horse is going to have no problem with the added distance. So maybe if you're looking for a long shot, he could be the one. As far as the undercard goes, a couple horses looking good include Tuz for Bupat Samir. He is going to be going in the Riyadh Dirt Sprint, and believe me, that race is going to be stacked, and we have a couple of nice U.S. horses. Bold Journey for Belmont. We have Skelly for Asmussen, who's bringing in a 7-race win streak, but Tuz really, really impressed me in the mornings here. I think he should be really interesting coming off an 8-length score in the Dubawi. Good luck for everybody who's going to be betting the Saudi Cup this weekend, and we'll see you at home soon.
All right, that was from Saudi Arabia, not Dubai. I'm getting my map confused. Maybe next up we'll have somebody corresponding from Dubai when it's World Cup Day. But here is the field for the Saudi Cup. And Jeff, time for us to handicap the $20 million World's Richest Thoroughbred Horse Race. A field of 15 entered with an also eligible in Scotland Yard. He will go because number 8, Mishu Hariel, has scratched. So scratch the 8 and the 15 Scotland Yard will draw into the field. So field of 14 set to go. White Abarrio, the morning line favorite. Ushpa Tesoro, second choice at 4-1 in the international odds projections. We'll see Parimutuel and the World Pools, how this all shakes out when fans start to bet on this one. Saudi Crown, 10-1. National Treasure, the Preakness winner last year and winner of this year's Pegasus World Cup, at 8-1. You've got Hoist the Gold with American interest in here, 30-1 in the morning line. Of course, he won the Cigar Mile. Defunded, the former Bob Baffert trainee, who won the Hollywood Gold Cup last year, now in Middle Eastern hands, transferred, and he will run for the new connections, 12-1 in the morning line there. And of course, Derma Sotogake, he's the horse you and I both liked last year going into the Kentucky Derby. He's got a chance to make amends for a good second place finish in the Breeders' Cup Classic in his rematch with White Abarrio. What a fun, interesting race. You kind of take the Breeders' Cup Classic, you throw in the Dirt Mile winner and National Treasure and some more international intrigue. And this is one of the more exciting editions of one of these international races, Dubai World Cup included, that we've seen in many years on the dirt.
Yeah, and the other thing about it is it's kind of a race within a race because there was so much speed signed on in this race, and it's a one-turn mile, which is actually good for the speed because they don't really have to be rushed off their feet leaving the gate.
Yep.
In a position because of an upcoming close turn. They got a long run, so they all can kind of come out of the gate, get in the rhythm. And sometimes when that happens, the pace isn't quite as fast as you might think it would be with all so much speed, so many front running types or pace pressers in the race. Having said that, I'm going to handicap the race under the assumption, and I hope it's the correct one, I might be wrong, that maybe the closers might have an edge. Long run in, decent contested pace. No one's going to get a breather in this race.
You're right.
I looked at the 2 Japanese horses. Derma Sotogake ran so well in the Breeders' Cup Classic, stayed on very, very well, despite the fact that we had been told that he had had his training interrupted and maybe wasn't 100% for the race, and still ran great. And I was reading quotes from the trainer saying, well, he didn't have him ready last year. This year he's ready. which is good to know. So I think he will run well. And I don't want to be chasing him. You know how that goes when you get a horse and you figure that you got to prove to yourself that you were right all along. So
right.
Them and stuff like that. But I was impressed with White Barrio's win in the race here in Santa Anita for sure. I think he's legit. The one thing though that I bring back to me though in terms of that race, the Breeders' Cup Classic, is the power of speed at Santa Anita and how difficult it is to make up an extended run. And I liked Ushba Tesoro in the Breeders' Cup Classic, despite that. And he was way back early. He made a run. He finished fifth, got beat only 3 lengths over a track that really didn't complement his style. So I think in this race, if he were to run back to his best race, he has a chance to blow the field away in the final stages of the race. But he's 4-1. I don't know whether that's a great price or not, but I think he'll run well. Dermot Sotogake, I know will run well because he'll be a little closer to the pace than Ushba Tesoro. He won't be coming from way out of it. And I think the winner is going to be one of those two. I really do. I wouldn't be shocked if White Barrio reproduced his outstanding race in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but he's inside the speed. And I don't know, Jeremy. I'm much more interested, honestly, in watching this race and evaluating than actually gambling on it because there are so many factors in here that I'm not really don't have my thumb on that nothing really would surprise me. But I do believe that the 2 Japanese horses are going to run really, really well. And if they're middle prices, maybe I can play them both.
Japan won the race last year with Pantalassa. In fact, 4 of the top 5 placings in this race outside of Country Grammar, the top 5 was all Japanese last year in the Saudi Cup. So Jeff's taking the 2 Japanese horses who do get the pace set up, right? We know they went fast in the Breeders' Cup and that carried at Santa Anita. We will see if that carries in Saudi Arabia. Let's give you a chance to go back and look at the Breeders' Cup Classic in extended replay here because you're going to see right off the bat, Saudi Crown's right into the mix, White Barrio's right into the mix, all the main players that you're kind of seeing back here on Saturday, right up into the mix of the Breeders' Cup Classic. And of course, the 2 Japanese horses will make their run in the race as well. So here's the Breeders' Cup Classic, Larry Comas from last year.
45.73 was the half mile for Arabian Night, who leads it by 3/4 of a length. Saudi Crown on the outside second. White Barrio continues to stalk the top 2 as they race for the far turn. Derma Sotogake has come under pressure. So too Zandon. They're both being asked to run, as is Ushba Tesoro, and he's 9 lengths off the lead around the far turn. Arabian Night. White Barrio circles up on the outside. Saudi Crown all out between those 2. Then it's Derma Sotogake. Ushba Tesoro is beginning to move on the outside, but work to do as White Barrio and Arabian Night turn for home together in the Breeders' Cup Classic. White Barrio has taken the lead. Arabian Night gives way. Derma Sotogake and Ushba Tesoro are trying to close the gap, but it is White Barrio and Erad Ortiz, and they have won the Breeders' Cup Classic over Derma Sotogake. Roxy came late, was in a photo for third with Arabian Night in 2:02.87 seconds. It's White Barrio.
We talk about the layoff with horses, coming out of the Breeders' Cup to this race, not that far of a distance of a layoff. But when you look at Derma Sotogake, Jeff, and you look at White Barrio, both those horses were kind of coming off layoffs into the Breeders' Cup, right? I mean, Derma Sotogake had not run since the Kentucky Derby. White Barrio, they laid off from the Whitney. They just said, we're shutting it down after Saratoga. No final prep there. So basically for White Barrio, this will be the second race since August. For Derma Sotogake, just the second race since May. These horses are absolutely going to not be over the top. It's a matter enough if they're fit and ready to go. And I can't imagine with $20 million on the line and the trainers we're talking about with these 2 world-class horses that they won't be fit and ready to go. So they should be at their peak is what I'm saying, is the fact that they're not over-raced. This isn't an afterthought. This is a destination for these 2 horses. And I think we're going to see a show on Saturday morning.
Seems to me this race has been on the schedule. I think the trainers know when it was and when it was supposed to be. I think they kind of work backwards from there to say, okay, how do I get my horse ready to run the race of his life on this day? These are good top world-class trainers. They know what to do. And I think it's a great race. I mean, from a race that I think we kind of thought like maybe it was going to be an afterthought 4 or 5 years ago when it was first planned. Now it is a major step goal for every older horse in the world. Why wouldn't it be with that kind of money? So I'm looking forward to it, and not really knowing the track that well and only going by what we've seen in previous years. I do think it's probably a reasonably fair track, and I think everybody will have a chance. That's why it's going to be a great race.
Post time is 12:40 Eastern for the Saudi Cup. The card starts about 7 a.m. Eastern with the trio of the Arabian races to start, and then the thoroughbreds really kick things up in race number 4 in the Saudi Derby. Again, a quick reminder, your wagering format for Saturday morning. Again, you can bet these races with first bet and express bet. Pick 6 on the final 6 races on the card, 2 pick 3s on the card, no pick 4s or pick 5s. They do offer daily double wagering. This is the international pools that you'll be betting into, commingled. Win place wagering with the 17.5% takeout, the best value there amongst those races. And again, a $10 money back special on win bet. So you get the low takeout, you get the win bet insurance, if you will. If your win bet finishes second or third in any race, you get up to $10 back. So you might want to attack with some win plays on that Saudi Cup card on Saturday. From the Middle East. All right, let's move on to our domestic races on Saturday, where Oaklawn Park has Rebel Stakes Day and a big series of undercard stakes races to go with it. We're going to look at 4 races in succession on the card, races 8, 9, 10, and 11, I believe they are. Let's start with the carousel in race number 8, Jeff Siegel. This is a race where 3 of the horses come back out of the American Beauty Stakes, but none of the main players out of that race. So are we looking for somebody fresh to the Oaklawn scene, perhaps?
I am. I looked at Mucho Macho Girl, filly who has never been in a stakes, but she's only had 4 starts, 3 wins. Numbers are very solid. I like her style in the sense that she doesn't bust out there and open up and hang on. She kind of presses the pace and then gives you a second move, kicks on with it. I love her work pattern since her most recent win, which was in early January at Fairgrounds. She won an overnight race there with a very strong 86 buyer number, which is probably good enough to beat this field. And I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of her for Dallas Stewart. So based on her work pattern, her style of running, her numbers, and her potential with only just the 4 starts so far, I think Mucho Macho Girl, to me anyway, is the one to beat.
And she comes in from Fairgrounds. Again, we've talked about this in some of our other handicapping podcasts, but January was a rough time to be at Oaklawn Park, where they missed 11 days of training during the month of January. So a lot of those horses got behind the 8 ball. Those shipping in from out of town, whether they came from Turfway, Fairgrounds, other places, have had a lot of success at Oaklawn over the last several weeks since they got back into running. At some point, those other horses who missed some of that training time are going to be all caught up. But until you start to see, them assert their local dominance again, it's not a bad idea at all to take a look at the shippers. You've got one in Mucho Macho Girl. Now, we can't just give one horse out for the Oaklawn races on Saturday, Jeff, because we've got a special promo called the Exactathon. If you could pick 6 exactas, races with 6 exacta winners out of the 12 on the card, you're going to share your take on $20,000 in cash. And the person who picks the most exactas, the races with the most exactas picked correctly at Oaklawn on Saturday, is going to win $5,000 in cash. So there is 25,000 good reasons to play the exactas on Saturday at Oaklawn Park. Now, again, if you're looking at these kind of hit and split things like we did last week at Fairgrounds on Risen Star Day, the $25,000 hit and split for the late pick 5 was only won by 11 players. So they each got over $2,200, almost $2,300 each, in addition to what they cashed on the pari-mutuel side. I think it paid somewhere around $3,000 for the. So all those folks who played with first bet and express bet, instead of cashing for $3,000, cashed for over $5,000 on the hit and split last weekend. That's just free money that we're giving away. So it's a great promotion. Same sort of thing here. It's a hit and split, if you will, when we look at the Exacta-thon coming up on Saturday. Now, you have to hit an Exacta in 6 to 12 races races. That doesn't sound easy, but you can play as many combinations as you want. So if you have a 5-horse exacta box, or you've got a chalky exacta in one race, it's all the same. Just get one and survive. And you're trying to get 6 during the course of the 12 races. You got to hit in 6 different races, not 6 total exactas. You need an exacta in 6 different races. So Jeff's got you with Mucho Macho Girl. I'm going to throw in Zeitlos as the other horse I think you want to look at in this Carousel Stakes. She's coming off a nice win at the meet. I think it sets up nicely for her. She's got a little bit of a closing kick in a race that's got a lot of speed. Asmussen trains that daughter of Curlin, Tyler Gaffleone, in town to ride for some of the bigger races. We'll pick up the mount here in the Carousel. So maybe Mucho Macho Girl and Zeitlos, a way to start off the exactathon.
That's how I see it. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the Honeybee Stakes coming up next. The Honeybee is the prep for the Fantasy Stakes, which is on the Kentucky Oaks Trail. A filly that's been in a lot of races. She seems to scratch and find the right spot to run. West Omaha. She was going to run on Springboard Mile Day at Remington Park in the Trapeze. They scratched out of there with a medication snafu. Then she was supposed to run back last weekend at Fairgrounds in the Rachel Alexandra. They scratched out of that spot to run here in the Honeybee. So they're being selective with where they put her, but everything they've done is pretty much come up roses. She's won 2 easily. She's 4 for 4 in the money. What do you make of West Omaha for Brad Cox, who's going to be, I think, a pretty solid favorite in the Honeybee?
I mean, she's clearly the one to beat. I mean, she should be a short price. I've seen her run on video, and she looks great on video. She got that. She has the tactical speed to lay close as wherever you want her to be. She can stalk, and then when you ask her to run, she quickens like a good filly.
Right.
I like the fact that every race that she's run, she's made a forward move numbers wise. I mean, the only thing that kind of I'm surprised at, this is going to be her 5th different rider. I don't know.
Yeah.
If I were on her, I'd want to stay on her or do everything I could. But she's the one to beat. There's no doubt about it. And you have to put her on top. But the one that caught my eye was Band of Gold. I'm really hesitant to say anything definitive about any performance that's accomplished over and off track, unless I know it's going to be an off track. I have no idea what weather the weather's going to be at Oakland. So whether or not Band of Gold is just nothing more than a mud freak. She was 24-1 when she won the Martha Washington, but she is a daughter of a preservationist, and he was one of my favorite horses. And he's going to get a good horse. They're going to be developing late. They're going to be long distance stretch running types, which Band of Gold apparently is. And she did win on fast ground at Churchill first time out. So. Maybe the track didn't move her up. Maybe she's just getting good. She certainly left her previous form behind. How about this? She earned an 86 buyer number in that win, which is faster than anything West Omaha's ever earned. So if it wasn't the off track and she's going to be a decent price, to me, Band of Gold has to be considered somewhere on your ticket.
6-2, maybe the way we go in the exactathon. 2-6 is you've got 2 options there with West Omaha, the favorite, and Band of Gold. Let's go back to that Martha Washington. Matt Dinnerman picks her up, and she finishes strong.
As they come off the turn, Band of Gold trying to get into it. She's 4th, 4 behind. Denim and Pearls asked for her best and kicks on to the lead. She opens up a length and a half. And second tap at Janali. Neon Beach between them. Band of Gold continues to come charging. And here's Band of Gold for the upset. Band of Gold and Brian Hernandez Jr. to the lead, soaring away to win the Martha Washington Stakes.
That's what a $50 winner looks like. She was 24-1 that day. Kenny McPeak's having a great meet at Oaklawn. He's already won, 15 plus races, over 20% wins, and a nice week for Kenny because he picked up his 2000th career victory the other night at Turfway Park. So congrats to him. Band of Gold won to watch in there. And Jeff, sunny and 68 Saturday in Hot Springs. How does that treat you when you're saying about the weather for you?
I'm glad because I want to see those races run under dry conditions, so nobody has an excuse. Everybody has a chance to reproduce their form, and then maybe the results will be a little bit more definitive than we have when we got a messy track and we have no idea if it was the track or the horse that really won the race.
Brad Cox had the dominant filly last year, Wet Paint, if you remember, on the series towards the fantasy stakes. She really ran roughshod over the folks at Oaklawn. We'll see if he continues it with West Omaha, or maybe Kenny McPeak continues his role with Jeff's top pick in their Band of Gold. Next up at Oaklawn, we're going to have horses prepping towards the Oaklawn Handicap. It's the Razorback. I made this the Express Bet Race of the Week, not just because it's a $600,000 purse, because when you go through this field of 13, you're going to say this is not a $600,000 field. But what you will say is there's no standout, and it's a great gambling race. And so while they're running for a very inflated purse, you can understand why. We talked about the Saudi Cup, just to get on a little aside here, how the Saudi Cup is kind of like started maybe as a novelty, we thought, but how dominant it's become as a race. It has really changed the international handicap division too. I mean, when you think about the U.S. races, it's had a major impact on the Pegasus World Cup in January. It's had a major impact on the Santa Anita handicap. Races like this, like the Razorback, 600,000. You've got the best horses in the U.S. heading there for 20 million, 600,000, a million, 3 million in Pegasus. It just doesn't stack up to 20. And you understand that connections want to run for that kind of once in a lifetime money over in Saudi Arabia, but it has definitely had a trickle-down effect. And so horses that would have been going to Santa Anita or to the Pegasus or another big race around the country in the handicap division, if they go to Saudi Arabia, now those other races have openings. So those second-tier horses might move up to the first-tier races. And now the second-tier race, like the Razorback, ends up looking like a listed stakes. And that's kind of the way this field is. But it's a good, deep cast in here, and it's going to be a good betting race.
It's a handicap race, which we don't have many of. Mm-hmm. And here's the funny thing about this. The high weight is 118 pounds and the low weight is 115 pounds. So
yeah.
Exactly, go out and take a stand here in terms of the weight.
Right.
But the funny thing is, Jeremy, this race looks like they could make it equal weights and it would be just the same.
Yeah, it may look a lot like that on the tote board, right? I mean, there may not be a lot of top-end horses and a lot of bottom-end horses. You could very well get a 7-2 favorite in this race.
Or higher, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I went through this race horse by horse several times to try to find one that really caught my eye and said, okay, that's the standout. I had to go through this race like 5 times before I actually came up with one. And I'm not even that confident, but I one thing that I did notice about this race is that many of these horses have races that they have run that are good enough to win. But most of those races that you can say that about were races that were accomplished in front-running fashion. And we know that the best trip is on the lead every step of the way without pressure. And a number of these horses have run really well, but only when they make the lead. They can't all make the lead here.
Right.
One horse that I found, that a horse that I know doesn't need the lead to win, that can come from off the pace and can handle any kind of pace scenario, and actually maybe even the faster the better, is Notary. And Notary is a horse that was claimed for $50,000 last summer at Hawthorne. Before that, you would never necessarily look at him as any kind of graded stakes horse. He was a claimant horse, really. That's what he was. But he was claimed by a very high percentage trainer,
right,
Armando Hernandez. And since he's joined that barn, his numbers have gone from mid 80s all the way up to the mid 90s, which is good. I mean, and he does it the right way, which is to say that he sits off the pace and then he kicks home. He doesn't worry about being in front. He can be anywhere. He's coming off a 5-length win in the mud, but I know he doesn't need the mud. He won't get it at Oaklawn, but he's run on fast ground. And the way he's continued to improve in his recent form for his high percentage trainer, and the fact that he's won a lot of races, and he's won at Oaklawn a couple of times, to me makes Notary maybe the most trustworthy of the group. So that's where I'm going. I'm going to go with Notary to sit off the pace and maybe produce the last run and win the Razorback.
I agree with you. He's one of the 2 horses in this race that I'm using on top in my wagers, the 11 Notary. He's coming off that win in the slot that you talked about. Let's give the fans a chance for a look and listen at that one with Matt Dinnerman.
Notary and U.S. Army are kicking away, and they're 3 ahead of Trident Hit. Under a ride third. Winnemac Avenue did not pick up his feet today. And then Escapologist. They're down the stretch. The leader here is Notary, putting away U.S. Army after the decent pace early for him up top. He's back in second, left behind. Notary opening up on the competition. He's 4 lengths ahead with a 16th to go. Notary and Manny Esquivel, much the best in the nightcap. Escapologist rallies on for the second spot. U.S. Army third.
And Jeff, you have to evaluate horses against the competition, right? You say that was just an allowance race and he's just an allowance horse. But when you look at this particular field, there's one graded stakes winner in the entire field of 13. That's Promise Keeper. And that came into 2021 Peter Pan. It's now 2024. So how much credit do you want to give to a graded stakes winner, from over 3 years ago? Promise Keeper does come off a win in the 5th season here at the meet at Oaklawn. He certainly could be the horse. He's a front end type. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of speed in this race. But if you're going to get a horse who's in really good form, step up in class, and win a race on paper that it looks like is a big class hike, this is the kind of situation you do it in, where the field doesn't necessarily equal that 600,000 grade 3 kind of purse. Notary in good form could win this. Another allowance horse I think who could step up and win is Magic Tap for Steve Asmussen. This is one Tyler Gaffley owns in the ride, coming out of like 5-6 straight mile and an eighth races. And with all the speed in this race, cutting back to the mile and a 16th, yeah, they're using the same finish line. They only use the 16th pole for a mile at Oaklawn. But I think just the general tendency of a mile and an eighth versus a mile and a 16th is for those races to be run at a different kind of tempo. And this race is going to be run extremely fast at a mile and a 16th. So I think that natural cutback is just going to force Magic Tap to be a little bit farther back and have the field come back to him once they start tiring. So I think that horse is going to default into a very good trip. And Notary, with his running style, is going to get that exact trip you're talking about. The 8 Magic Tap, the 11 Notary, those are the two horses I'm keying on top in all my exactathon plays in race number 10 at Oaklawn, the Razorback. And in a race where you probably could end up 6-7 deep if you really had to for a multi-race wager, I would just try to get by with those two. I would go too deep in that particular situation. And I like they both have good running styles. So if it sets up, then you've got two horses that have a chance to punch, and they're going to get the setup.
I absolutely think Magic Tap has to be used for the reasons you mentioned. He's a lightly raced colt with upside that some of the others may not have. One other point I want to make up is in trying to evaluate Notary's last race. He took U.S. Army by the throat and put him away. U.S. Army was coming in from Remington, where he had won his last 2 races by daylight. The most recent race was that with a 98 bar number. That was a very sharp, talented horse that he disposed of, and he shrugged him off like water off his back. So that tells me that Notary is more than ready to take on this group. And Magic Tap, because of the upside that he has, pedigree-wise, his form last year, decent 4th in the Pennsylvania Derby. He's got some form that I like. And as he pointed out, he's got the style that's going to be complemented by the projected race flow. So I think those are the two.
Time now on the First Call podcast to preview the big Triple Crown prep of the weekend. It's the $1.25 million Rebel Stakes from Oaklawn, local prep towards the Arkansas Derby, Kentucky Derby, qualifying points on the line. And we've seen these Oaklawn horses have a lot of success at Pimlico and the Preakness, and of course to the Belmont Stakes Series all throughout the Triple Crown. So the Rebel Stakes, a very important one with a field of 13. And we've got a headline runner in here, Jeff Siegel, named Timberlake. He's 6-5 in the morning line, coming off a 3rd place finish in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but he's probably best known in his stakes wins for his Champagne performance last year in New York.
Partner challenged now by Timberlake on the outside. Fierceness is 3rd, 3/4 in 1, 10 and 2. It is General Partner and Timberlake. Timberlake on the outside. General Partner continues to battle on as they hit the furlong marker, and it is Timberlake in front. General Partner back running in 2nd. Dancing Groom moves to 3rd. It is Timberlake who's going to win the Grade 1 Champagne, and he drew away at the end to win by 4.
4th in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last time. Timberlake will make his 3-year-old debut. He's a son of Into Mischief. Jeff, how does he stack up with these?
Well, if he shows up with that race, he's going to win. That was a terrific race in the Champagne. But again, it's a different condition. A 1-turn mile over a wet track. So he has to prove that he can do the same on fast ground. I've always liked him, but he's never been one that I can trust. Now, the first time out, he was even money. He was supposed to win his debut at Ellis Park. He was all the rage. He's the next champ. Couldn't find him. He finished 6th, by beating 15 lengths. He didn't break that well, but he certainly did not run anywhere near what they thought he was going to come back. So what they thought he was going to do. He comes back in his next start again. They hammer him off the board. He's 6-5. This time he shows up. And if you want to have a treat, go back and watch that maiden race at Ellis Park. And he looked like a superstar. He won by 9. It was a jaw-dropping performance. On the basis of that, he to me, he was the gamble of the year and the hopeful. I mean, how does this horse lose the hopeful? Not only did he lose it, but he went from an 87 Beyer number in his maiden win to a 69 Beyer in the hopeful. So he ran down to their level. They didn't beat him. He just didn't show up. So that's 3 races now, 2 of which he doesn't show up, and 1 he looks like a great horse. Comes back at his next start, and he wins the Champagne, the one we just saw. I mean, he beats a good field. I mean, he did it the right way. He earned a big number, a 93 Beyer number. So on the basis of that, he's 3-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And then in that race, he finishes 4th, gets beat 8 lengths. He didn't run that well. I mean, I'm not saying he could have won or should have won, but he should have run a little better than that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what to make of him. I know he's got a tremendous amount of talent. I'm looking at the work tab at Fairgrounds. I don't see the works myself, but I look at it. It looks very impressive. It's a little light, but I don't think Brad Cox is sending him out here short. I think he's leaving. Right. I think he's leaving a race, or 2 in him, but he's had him fit enough to win. I want to see Timberlake show up and do what he's supposed to do and run like he's supposed to run. If it's not him, if he decides I don't feel like running again, then I'm interested in Dematic because we made him a future star. And he's got that. He's a gun runner. He's got that progressive that I like. He's putting blinkers on. I'm not sure why, but I'm sure Steve Asmussen has his reasons. And another horse that looked really good visually last time out, but again, a sloppy track. Did that move him up, or is he just getting better? So I think those are the 2 I'm going to focus in on. But I hope Timberlake shows up and runs his best race because I know on his best day, he's among the best in the division.
From a gambler standpoint in this race, I don't want to take the short price. The last thing I saw from that horse wasn't as good as people thought he was. So he's got to show it to me. And he could win this race, and I think he's a legit top 15 kind of Kentucky Derby prospect at this point based on some of his 2-year-old form and where he ranks with some of the others in the crop. But he's got to show it now at 3. We don't know what we're going to get. And at 6-5 in the morning line, and quite frankly, may go shorter than that, even with the big field size in here. I'm apt to look elsewhere in this particular spot. Dematic is a horse you mentioned, got a lot of respect for him. I think he's a contender in here. But Steve Asmussen's got another one that I'm going to get tricky with in here, and his name is Laganos. He was expected to run much better than he did in the Smarty Jones. He was coming off a race there where he showed some pace in there, but then he backed up out of it. He's got to get more fit. Well, all the horses from Oaklawn who ran in the Smarty Jones had a chance to come back in the Southwest. He didn't run in the Southwest, and the Southwest ended up getting delayed by a week because of bad weather and all the training time that was missed. So all the Southwest horses now are coming back on 3 weeks. I think skipping the Southwest is going to turn out to be a very shrewd move because now he's the horse who's fresh. And Laganos is a horse who, after that race, they left and went back to Fairgrounds with him and said, we're not missing any training time with this horse. Laganos has been right on his training path since running in the Smarty Jones. I don't think this race has got an absolute burner type pace to it. I think it's just moderate. And I think Laganos is going to be up near it. Keith Asmussen, the jockey, the son of Steve, coming off a big 4-win day last week, and he's riding as well as he has at any point in his young career. Confident, maybe a little family move in here. Laganos is 20-1 in the morning line, Jeff, and I'm going to take a stab in here. He's my pick and countdown to the crown, and he's going to be my gamble in this race. Is he the best horse among these 13? No. But you've got horses like Just Steel drawn way outside in the 11 hole again for D. Wayne Lucas. Tough as nails, but a tough post. Time for Truth is a horse we had as a future star off his debut win for Ron Moquette. He's got a lot of ability, but he's got 2 6-furlong races and now comes out of the 13 hole. That first turn's going to come up on him faster than anything he's ever seen coming out of those 2 6-furlong races, and that's tough. So if the 11 and 13 are compromised by the posts in here and some inexperience from the outside runner, Dematic, Laganos, the 2 horses for Asmussen, the 6 and the 9, to me, those are the 2 places you're going to try to beat the favorite in here. He's going to be tough to beat, but I think 4-5 is what we're going to see on Timberlake. I'm going to try to do it and take a little stab in here. And if we can get 20-1 on Laganos, he was only 3-1 in the Smarty Jones. Maybe we get a bounce back.
The funny thing is that you mentioned Timberlake and the gamble at 6-5. If he wins the race at 6-5 or even money, do you really care anyway from a gambling standpoint? I mean, what have you missed out on? Yeah. So I'm interested from a fan standpoint to see if Timberlake is as good as I thought he was, and if he is, he beats me. Do I care? No. But Dematic, to me, with the blinkers on, that's an interesting move here for Asmussen. And I understand your reasoning with Lagunas, the Cantheros colt, who could be forwardly placed and maybe not necessarily in front. He didn't win his allowance race in front. We know he doesn't need it. So we'll see that. And then Dematic with the blinkers and the improving pattern and the pedigree and all that other stuff. To me, he's 8-1. I could live with that. Yeah. So we'll see what happens in the Rebel and whether or not we have a kind of a performance from anybody in this race that puts them right into the first flight, the first group of Derby prospects.
Let's take our two Asmussens and make an exactathon out of it. You and I in there with a couple prices. Dematic and Lagos in the Rebel Stakes will be our picks on Saturday. Okay, time for our final stakes race on the podcast today. It will be from Southern California's Santa Anita Park, where it's the Santa Ana Stakes. 1.25 miles on the turf. They start on the downhill course, come down the hill, make one lap around. These are fillies and mares, grade 3, the older distaffers in the filly and mare turf division. Jeff, how do you see this one shaking out?
Well, Linda's Gift has really gotten good since coming to California for Richard Mandela. I'm not sure it's necessarily because of the trainer change. She had been George Weaver back at New York a couple of years ago and wasn't all that. But she is a daughter of Arrogate. They tend to get much better with age, and as he did. And Linda's Gift has now gotten to a point where she's among the very best, if not the best, older grass mares in California. She won her last 2 starts. The red carpet over 1 mile and 3/8 of Del Mar. She did that gate to wire, came back and won the Astra at 1.5 miles gate to wire, but she's not a need to lead to win. Back in her younger days, she could certainly sit off the pace and make a run. And I don't think she's going to be in front in this race, even though they're backing up from 1.25 miles. It's still not going to be a fast pace. I would imagine Leisure Wear will be in front. But Linda's Gift can sit on the outside, just kind of prompt her, use her as kind of a target, and then go on with it. And the way Linda's Gift has been running, her numbers are rising. She continues to train well. I know she's 5-2 in the morning line. I could live with that. So I'm going to go with Linda's Gift to continue her winning ways and continuing her rise up the ladder.
Let's take a peek back at her win in the Astra.
Quarter pole, Yarborough between horses, Lakota Spirit at the rail, top of the stretch, and Linda's Gift goes on, leads by 2. Musical Rhapsody in the center of the course. At the rail, it's Leisure Wear in third. They're coming to the 16th pole, and it's Linda's Gift by 3. Musical Rhapsody clearly into second and finishing well, but no one's catching Linda's Gift today. Linda's Gift dominates the Astra. Musical Rhapsody second. Duvet Day belatedly for third in front of Lakota Spirit and Leisure Wear.
All right, so Jeff's final gift on the show is Linda's Gift in the stakes race on Saturday, the Santa Ana from Santa Anita. That's going to wrap up our handicapping podcast. We'll be back on Tuesday on It's Official, where we recap a big weekend, of course, international and Kentucky Derby intrigue. In fact, international Kentucky Derby intrigue when you look at the Saudi Derby and what we might see with Forever Young, and then the Rebel Stakes here stateside, and that huge clash in the $20 million Saudi Cup. Can't wait to see how that shakes out on Saturday morning. Once again, reminders, Eddie Olczyk, your host in Beat the Host. This is the 8th and final week of the Beat the Host regular season. Take down Eddie for your chance to qualify for the Beat the Host championship round coming up in 2 weeks. Jeff, this is going to be a lot of fun. I know you'll be up early on Saturday morning to take in the Saudi racing, but by the time they get to the big race, you should be up by then. I mean, it'll be like 9:40 your time.
Well, the DVR will be up, at least for the Arabian races. I don't have a high degree of interest in the first 3 races, but I'll be up for when the thoroughbreds start running. I'll be up and watching, and I can't wait. It's going to be a great day of racing, and not only early in the morning here in Southern California, but then in mid-afternoon as well with the Oaklawn races. That's going to be fun, and then I'll be out at Santa Anita later in the day for the big races, the main races at Santa Anita. So it's a great day of racing. Can't wait for Saturday.
If you need me, I'll give you a call bright and early on Saturday morning. I'll help a brother out. If you
no, I don't need you. That's okay. I'll get up when I feel like getting up.
On behalf of my partner, Jeff Siegel, hopefully he gets some Z's Friday night into Saturday. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great weekend. Good luck in playing the races all around the country and around the world coming up this weekend. We'll talk to you Tuesday.